Right, so welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be talking about Peter Sims's book, Little Bets, how breakthrough ideas emerge from small discoveries.
Yeah.
And we're really going to kind of dig into this idea that, this kind of myth of the eureka moment of these big innovative ideas just sort of popping into people's heads.
Yeah.
Sims argues that's not really how it works.
Yeah.
And he uses some really cool examples like
Yeah.
Pixar and Google, Amazon, to show how these companies that we think of as having these brilliant, fully formed ideas, that's not how it happened at all.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Google, for instance, is like this all-knowing oracle, right?
Yeah.
It can answer any question. It's like this incredibly powerful tool. But it started as a way to, improve library searches.
Right, yeah.
Which is a much humbler goal.
Much humbler
than where they ended up.
I know.
And then Pixar, this animation powerhouse, started as a hardware company.
Right. Crazy, huh?
Yeah. So it's interesting because it really highlights how we often, I think, overestimate the importance of that initial idea, like that initial genius idea. And instead, it's this constant process of experimentation and adaptation.
Yeah.
Little bets along the way.
Yeah, exactly. The little bets that lead you to the big breakthroughs, right?
So if these massive companies didn't start with this, like lightning bolt of inspiration, how did these groundbreaking ideas come about?
Yeah.
And Sims actually argues that it's way more common than we think to find success through trial and error.
Totally.
And he backs it up with research. Like he talks about...
He does, yeah, and it makes sense.
Chris Rock, who we all think of as this comedic genius, right?
Right.
But his routines are honed through thousands of tiny experiments. Like each joke is like a little bet, tested on stage, refined based on the audience reaction, and then tried again. So it's less about...
It's less about just being
naturally hilarious.
Yeah, naturally hilarious.
And more about being like a really dedicated scientist of comedy.
Scientist of comedy, yeah.
Interesting. And, speaking of experiments, Sims brings up Amazon, which is notorious for trying all sorts of things.
Yep.
I remember reading about, and I don't know if this still exists, but they had this feature where it would compare what you were buying to other people's shopping carts. And it would say, other people
who bought this also bought that.
Or whatever,
Which sounds really cool on paper, but nobody used it.
Right, nobody used it. And even Bezos admits they had tons of ideas that they thought were brilliant.
Yeah, right.
But the customers just didn't bite.
Right.
And then they have this program, the Associates program, where other websites can link to products on Amazon and then get a cut of the sale.
That's a brilliant one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it seems like a much smaller idea.
Yeah, exactly.
But it exploded.
It did. It turned into a huge revenue stream for them.
Yeah.
And the reason it worked is really interesting because it tapped into this power of word of mouth marketing, right?
Yeah.
It incentivized everyday website owners to become these Amazon advocates, right?
Yeah.
So it's like having a sales force you don't have to pay for.
Right.
Could you apply that principle to your work?
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a great question for you to think about.
Yeah, yeah.
And this brings us to what Sims calls little bets.
Yeah.
So these are achievable, affordable actions to test ideas.
Right.
So instead of pouring all your resources into this one massive risky venture, you break it down into smaller, more manageable experiments.
It's about testing the waters before you dive headfirst into the deep end.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of writing your whole novel first, you write a chapter.
Right.
You get some feedback, and then you adjust based on that.
Exactly.
And this shift in thinking moves us away from focusing on predicted gains, which we all know can be.
Which are unpredictable.
Yeah, super unpredictable.
Yeah.
And towards what Sims calls affordable losses.
Affordable losses. Yeah, it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, so instead of saying, I'm going to make $1 million with this app, you're saying, okay, I'm willing to spend X amount of time and money to see if it's got legs.
If this has legs.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like setting a budget for experimentation.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowing that not every little bet's going to pay off.
Not every little bet's going to pay off.
Yeah.
It's a much more realistic and, frankly, less stressful way.
I like that it takes the pressure off.
It takes the pressure off, yeah.
And it's also
Oh, it reminds me of Steve Jobs and Pixar.
Oh, yeah.
They were a hardware company initially.
Yes, they were.
But Steve Jobs let this tiny animation team experiment with these short films. Like, what if those had flopped?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Those short films were essentially like affordable losses.
Yeah.
But instead of being flops, they became these like unexpected successes.
Yeah.
And really paved the way for Pixar's like feature film empire.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It shows how sometimes the most unexpected paths can lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
Totally.
So it's really about embracing those early missteps
Yeah.
as part of the process, not freaking out when things don't go as planned.
Yeah, right.
And this is where
It's really about seeing
that growth mindset comes in. This idea that our abilities aren't fixed.
Yeah, it's not like set in stone.
Yeah.
You can change.
And there's actually a Stanford psychologist, Carol Dweck, who researched this. And she found that people with a growth mindset see failures as chances.
Best chances to learn.
Learn and grow.
And grow, yeah.
Whereas people with a fixed mindset
Yeah, they get stuck.
get stuck because they see those failures as proof.
Proof that they just can't do it.
They're just not good at something.
Right.
Yeah, like John McEnroe,
Oh, yeah.
the tennis star.
Classic.
Super talented.
Yeah.
But when he lost,
Yeah.
he blamed everyone else.
Oh, yeah.
Like classic
That's the fixed mindset.
fixed mindset, yeah.
Right there.
And then you compare that to Michael Jordan,
right. It's
who
veteran.
was not born a basketball god.
No.
He put in the work.
Uh-huh.
He saw setbacks as fuel
Yeah.
and just kept pushing.
Totally different.
Yeah. And anyone can
And you know what? Anyone can.
cultivate a growth mindset, right?
Cultivate a growth mindset.
It starts with just recognizing how you think about challenges. Like when you hit a wall,
Yeah.
do you see that as proof
Yeah.
that you can't do it?
Can't do it.
Or as a sign
Right.
that you need to try a different approach?
It's just information, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a subtle shift, but it can drastically change how you approach
Yeah.
innovation and problem solving.
That's right.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
Sims talks about this tool
Mm-hmm.
for embracing these so-called failures, which is prototyping.
Prototyping. That's a great one.
So prototyping, for people who might not be familiar,
Hmm?
is basically
Yeah.
creating these rough drafts or models
Yeah. It's like a rough draft.
to test ideas quickly,
Quickly and affordably.
affordably. This is what Frank Gehry does.
Frank
The
Gehry.
famous architect
Right, yeah.
with those crumpled paper models.
The crumpled paper models. Yeah, he's known for these, like
Shit.
super innovative building. But he starts by like literally folding and crumpling paper
I know.
to explore different forms. Talk about low tech, right?
Yeah, but even like a world-renowned architect
Mm-hmm.
uses something that we all have
I know.
lying around.
Yeah.
But it makes sense
Yeah.
because those rough prototypes allow him to play with ideas,
Right. And not get too attacked.
get feedback,
Right.
and not get overly attached
To any one design.
to any one design. Yeah,
That's right.
and that's key.
Yeah. And it makes it easier to get feedback.
Right.
Right. Because if you show somebody a rough draft,
Mm.
you're more likely to get honest feedback because they know it's not the final product.
Right. It's not like they're
Yeah.
judging your masterpiece,
Exactly. And it takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
So the collaboration is more genuine.
and you're less precious about it.
Yeah, you're less precious about it. You're more willing to let it go.
Yeah. And then another really cool technique
Mm-hmm.
that Sims talks about for boosting creativity
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
is this idea of plussing.
Plussing. Yeah, it's a great one.
Plussing, and this comes from like improv.
Yeah.
And it's all about building on ideas
Uh-huh.
without judgment.
Without judgment. Yeah.
So instead of shutting down possibilities with like
But or no.
but or no, you're saying yes and
Yes, and
to keep the creative flow going.
to keep the creative flow going.
like that improv rule, yes and.
Yeah, yeah.
You accept what's been said and
Goes
then
ill done.
you add to it.
Yeah.
And you create something
Yeah.
even better.
Exactly.
So like picture the Pixar team
Yeah.
working on, I don't know, a scene in Toy Story 3.
Right.
They're starting with these rough sketches.
Yeah.
And instead of criticizing, the director
Mm-hmm.
is using this plussing to kind of guide them.
Right. To guide them.
So instead of saying, that doesn't work,
That doesn't work.
they might say,
I like Woody's eyes.
I like Woody's eyes. And what if they were a bit bigger?
And what if they were a bit bigger? Yeah.
And what if he was holding a different toy?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's this subtle shift.
It's a subtle shift.
But It encourages this exploration.
It encourages exploration and makes everyone feel like their ideas are valued.
Right.
Right? And each idea becomes the stepping stone to something better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can use plussing anywhere.
Anywhere.
Right? Meetings.
Yeah.
Brainstorming sessions.
That's your friends.
Even with, like, family and friends.
Right there, yeah.
It just creates this much more positive and productive
It changes the whole dynamic.
environment.
Yeah.
So now let's look at how these little bets can actually snowball into some pretty impressive wins.
Right.
Sims uses Starbucks as a great example.
Yeah, Starbucks. You know, it's funny to think of Starbucks now like this global coffee empire.
Yeah.
Like they didn't just magically appear, you know. It was a series of little bets and just constant adaptation to what customers actually wanted.
Yeah, I remember reading about how Howard Schultz was like totally against non-fat milk.
Yeah, right.
He thought it was like against
his whole the whole
authentic Italian coffee experience.
Yeah.
But people kept asking for it.
Yeah.
So eventually he was like, fine.
Yeah.
And guess what? Non-fat milk became a huge hit.
Yeah.
Like almost half their latte and cappuccino sales at one point.
It's crazy.
It's wild.
Like you can't always predict what people
No, you can't predict it.
Yeah.
And they didn't stop there. Like they kept iterating, adding new flavors, food items. Even the rewards program was born out of just like listening to feedback and making adjustments.
Yeah, it's a perfect example of how those small wins, those little bets, can snowball into something massive over time.
And it wasn't like this carefully laid out master plan.
Right.
It was more like this
organic
evolution based on real world feedback.
Yeah. It was like this emergent kind of strategy, right?
Yeah.
Just like Pixar did with their early short films.
Oh yeah.
Like those were like mini testing grounds for new animation techniques, different storytelling approaches, all to see what resonated with audiences.
And those short films became like
springboards for the features.
Yeah, springboards for the feature films we all know and love.
Right.
Like they were honing their craft.
Yeah.
And building a fan base.
That's right.
At the same time.
That's right.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
And this brings us back to like one of those core principles we keep kind of coming back to, which is the importance of embracing failure. Those early missteps, those experiments that don't quite work out.
Yeah.
They're all valuable learning experiences.
Right. It's all data.
Yeah. And I'm starting to see how this ties back into that growth mindset.
Yeah, growth mindset.
You mentioned earlier, like if you view those failures as setbacks, you're likely to...
You'll probably give up.
Yeah. But if you see them as opportunities to learn and adapt...
Then you're more likely to keep pushing forward.
You're much more likely to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how could you use this approach to, say, learn a new language?
Learn a new language. Oh, yeah.
Which is something that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
But it just feels like...
Can be daunting. Yeah.
Daunting, right?
It is.
Like, where do you even start?
Well, instead of focusing on like the massive goal of fluency, which can be really overwhelming.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I got to learn. Like,
you got to learn every
word. Every word.
Grammar rule.
Yeah.
What if you made a little bet on just learning one new phrase a day?
Okay, one new phrase a day.
Yeah.
That's doable.
Right. That's much more manageable.
Yeah. Yeah, and then even if I like mess up the pronunciation or forget some words along the way.
Those are just learning opportunities,
okay.
Not failures, right? You're constantly experimenting, gathering feedback, adjusting your approach.
Yeah, and I can see how that would make the whole process just less intimidating.
Less intimidating. Yeah, it's like you're breaking down the huge mountain into smaller, more climbable hills.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you've reached the summit.
Yeah.
It's the same principle with innovation.
Right. Those small steps, those
little bets.
They can lead to some pretty impressive peaks.
Yeah. Let's go back to plussing for a second.
Okay.
Because we talked about it before.
Yeah.
But I'm curious how this can be applied in like more of a
more practical everyday
setting.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to think about how often we shut down ideas
Yeah.
like in meetings or brainstorming sessions.
Yeah.
We're so quick to point out flaws, focus on the negatives,
Yeah.
shoot down anything that doesn't
Yeah.
fit our preconceived notions.
Yeah, it's like we're trained to be
I know.
critical, which can stifle.
Which can totally stifle creativity.
Yeah.
But what if, instead of immediately jumping to like, no, but, we started with yes, and.
Okay.
What if we embraced those initial ideas,
Yeah.
no matter how rough or unformed they might be, and then used plussing to kind of build on them collaboratively,
I see.
you know?
Yeah, so it's less about...
It's less about judging and more about exploring possibilities.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and you're not.
Yeah.
You're not, like...
Shooting each other down.
Shooting each other down. Yeah. Like, it's more...
It creates a sense of safety.
Yeah.
Where everyone feels comfortable contributing, knowing their ideas won't be ridiculed
Right.
or dismissed.
Yeah, it's like that 2 heads are better than 1 idea. But, like, on a much larger scale,
Right.
You've got everyone adding their...
Everyone's adding their unique perspectives.
Yeah, unique perspectives.
And the ideas start to bounce off each other in this really exciting way.
Yeah.
And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah.
You start to see connections you wouldn't have seen before. And the initial idea, which might have seemed mediocre on its own,
Yeah.
starts to evolve into something truly innovative.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about plussing in a group setting. But how could I use plussing if I'm working on something solo?
Well, I think it's all about cultivating that yes and
Okay.
mindset internally.
Okay.
Right? So when you have an idea, don't immediately judge it.
Instead, ask yourself, yes, and what else? Or yes, and how can I make this even better?
Okay, so it's like having this internal...
An internal brainstorming
session.
With yourself.
With myself.
Yeah.
I can see how that would keep those creative juices flowing.
Keep those creative juices flowing.
Yeah, instead of getting stuck in a rut, I'm constantly...
They're constantly pushing yourself.
Pushing myself.
To explore new possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not, like, limiting yourself.
Right.
To just that first idea.
Yeah, so how about some other examples of how these little bets have led to tangible results?
Okay, sure.
We talked about Starbucks.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about, like,
what about
other industries?
Online businesses.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, that's a constantly evolving landscape.
Yeah.
And the companies that thrive are the ones that are constantly experimenting and adapting.
It's not enough to just, like...
You can't just launch a website and hope for the best.
Launch a website and hope for the best.
You gotta be actively testing different strategies.
Yeah.
Seeing what resonates with your audience and making adjustments along the way.
So that's where the
little bets mindset comes in.
Little bets mindset comes in. Yeah.
It allows you to be agile.
Yeah.
To respond to changes in the market.
Right.
Stay ahead of the curve.
So instead of
investing a ton of money into a massive marketing campaign that might not work.
Yeah.
You might start with a series of smaller experiments.
Right.
Testing different approaches on a smaller scale.
So, like, trying.
Yeah, you might try different ad copy.
Yeah.
Experiment with different social media platforms. Test different pricing models.
Okay.
And based on the results of those little bets, you refine your strategy.
Yeah.
Double down on what's working.
It's like that old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. But instead of eggs,
we're
talking about ideas, resources, even time.
Time, right?
Yeah.
Which is one of our most
valuable resources.
Yeah. So the little bets approach allows you to, like, use your time more effectively. Testing ideas quickly and efficiently so you can move on.
To the next experiment.
To the next one, yeah.
Yeah.
And that ties back into the idea of affordable losses.
Right.
By making smaller bets, you're limiting your risk and ensuring that even if the experiment doesn't pan out, you haven't. Like,
you haven't lost
a significant amount of time or resources.
Yeah.
It's about maximizing your learning while minimizing your risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, let's, like, zoom out for a second.
Okay.
And talk about...
Bigger picture.
Yeah, the bigger picture implication.
Okay. Of this little bets philosophy.
Yeah.
It's not just about
business.
Launching a successful business.
Or creating a groundbreaking product.
Yeah.
It's much bigger than that.
Yeah. What is it about then?
It's a way of approaching life
Okay.
with curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
a willingness to experiment,
Mm-hmm.
and a belief that even small actions can lead to significant change.
It's like that butterfly effect idea, right?
Yeah, the butterfly effect.
Where a tiny flutter of wings
Yeah.
can eventually cause...
can cause a hurricane
Yeah.
on the other side of the world.
Yeah. And we may not always see, like,
Yeah.
the immediate impact of our
Right. You can't always
Parenting.
predict
little bets.
the long-term consequences of your actions.
Right. Yeah, but they have this ripple effect.
They
of
do
it.
create waves of positive change.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy.
Yeah, I like it too.
It gives me hope that even if my initial efforts seem like
Meaningful.
insignificant,
Yeah.
they can still contribute to...
something much bigger
Yeah.
than yourself.
Yeah. And that's a powerful thought.
It is a powerful thought.
Yeah, it's this reminder that
We all have the power to make a difference,
no matter...
how small our actions may seem.
So instead of getting bogged down by, like, the enormity of the problems we face,
The enormity.
whether it's
Yeah.
climate change,
Climate change, social injustice.
social injustice, even just like,
Just trying to figure out your purpose in life.
yeah, figuring out my purpose in life.
Yeah.
We can start by making small, meaningful bets.
Small, meaningful bets. Yeah.
You can focus on those actions.
The actions you can control.
Yeah, that we can control.
Yeah.
Those little experiments that might just lead to breakthroughs.
That's right.
I never could have imagined.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah, and who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe those small ripples.
Those small ripples will turn into tidal waves.
Yeah, of positive
A
change.
positive change.
Now that's a thought worth pondering.
It is a thought worth pondering.
So, as we continue our deep dive into little bets,
Okay.
let's turn our attention to how this philosophy can help us overcome
Okay.
one of the biggest obstacles to innovation, which is fear.
Fear. Yeah.
Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown.
These are all powerful emotions that can really hold us back from
Yeah.
taking those risks that are so essential for growth and progress.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do we combat those fears?
Yeah.
How do we embrace that sense of vulnerability
Yeah, that's a great question.
that comes with
Yeah.
putting ourselves out there
Yeah.
and experimenting with these new ideas?
Well, one of the most effective ways is through the power of storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah, humans are hardwired to connect with stories.
Mm-hmm.
They help us make sense of the world,
Yeah.
inspire us to action, and remind us that we're not alone in our struggles.
Right.
And when it comes to innovation,
Yeah.
stories can be incredibly powerful tools for overcoming fear.
Okay.
Think about the stories of successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They're often filled with setbacks,
Yeah.
failures, moments of doubt.
Yeah.
But those stories also highlight
Yeah.
the resilience, the determination,
Well,
the unwavering belief
yeah.
that ultimately led to success.
So by hearing those stories,
With hearing those stories,
we're reminded that failure isn't
it's not the end of the road.
the end of the road.
It's often just a detour
yeah, a deal.
on the path to something greater.
Right.
Yeah.
And it gives us the courage
Gives us the courage to take our own risks,
to take our own risk.
embrace our own failures,
Yeah, and to keep
and keep pushing forward.
pushing forward.
Even when things get tough.
yeah, and even sharing your story.
Sharing your story.
Even the messy ones.
Yeah, the messy, imperfect ones. The imperfect ones, can
Yeah.
have this, like,
Can have a ripple effect.
ripple effect.
It can inspire others to
Yeah.
take their own little bets.
Right.
And know that they don't have to have all the answers up front
Right, yeah.
to start making a difference.
Yeah, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into little bets,
Sure.
what's the most important thing
Most important thing.
you want to leave our listener with today?
I think it's this. Innovation is not some magical talent
Okay.
reserved for a select few.
Uh-huh.
It's a process, a way of thinking
Mm-hmm.
that anyone can cultivate
Yeah.
by embracing the philosophy of little bets,
Yeah.
by shifting your mindset to one of
Yeah.
experimentation and continuous learning.
You can unlock.
You can unlock your own creative potential
Yeah.
and start shaping the future one small bet at a time.
And who knows, maybe those small ripples
Will eventually turn into tidal waves of
Uh-huh.
positive change.
Uh,
Of positive change. So, as we head into the last part of this deep dive,
yeah.
what small, low-risk experiment can you initiate today
Today.
to explore an idea or tackle a problem
That's right.
you've been grappling with?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything huge.
Yeah.
Even a tiny step forward
Yeah,
is a step in the right direction.
that's right. And remember, You're not alone on this journey.
We're not alone.
There's a whole community.
Whole community of innovators, dreamers.
Little bet enthusiasts.
Little bet enthusiasts out there.
Eager to share their stories.
That's right.
Support each other.
Support each other, push the boundaries of what's possible.
Push the boundaries, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
We hope you found it insightful, and we encourage you to continue
To continue exploring
the world of little bets.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about your own experiments.
Your aha moments.
Your aha moments.
And the incredible things
The incredible things you create.
you create along the way. Welcome back to this deep dive into little bets.
Yeah.
We've been, really uncovering how innovation really happens.
Right.
Not through this sort of mythical eureka
Yeah.
moment,
Right.
but through a series of smaller, calculated experiments.
Yeah, it's a
Those little
it's a mindset shift, really, moving away from the pressure of placing all your hopes on one big bet,
Yeah,
and instead embracing a more iterative approach,
right.
testing, adapting, and learning along the way.
And we've seen how this little bets philosophy is played out
Yeah, we have.
in the real world with companies like Starbucks and Pixar
Pixar.
achieving massive success through this approach.
Right.
But I think what's really exciting is how applicable this is to
Everything.
everything. Yeah.
Pretty much everything.
It's not just
It's not just for businesses
for businesses or creative projects.
or, creative projects.
Yeah.
This mindset can be applied to your personal goals, relationships, even just trying new things, expanding your comfort zone.
It's like having this secret weapon
Yeah.
for navigating a world that's constantly changing.
Constantly changing.
So instead of getting paralyzed
Yeah.
by uncertainty, you have
A framework
a framework for taking action,
for taking action.
gathering feedback,
That's right.
and adjusting course
Yeah.
as needed.
Yeah, think about it this way.
Okay.
If you were trying to sail across the ocean
Mm-hmm.
without a map or a compass,
Right.
you wouldn't just, set a course and hope for the best.
Got
You'd
it.
be constantly
Checking your position.
checking your position, adjusting your sails,
Right.
making small course corrections
Based on
the wind, the current.
Yes, so instead of feeling overwhelmed by this
huge, unpredictable ocean,
unpredictable ocean.
you break it down into manageable steps.
Yeah.
You test the waters before you dive in head first.
Yeah.
And that's what Little Bets is all about, right?
Right.
It's about empowering you to shape the future rather than trying to predict it.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about the sort of practical
Practical side.
side of little bets, but there's also this really important
Yeah, there is.
emotional component.
Absolutely.
We all experience fear,
Yeah.
especially when trying something new.
Especially when you're stepping outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, or stepping outside our comfort zone.
Yeah.
And
That fear of failure, the fear of judgment, fear of the unknown, these are powerful emotions that can really hold us back.
hold us back. Yeah.
But, as we've seen, embracing those early missteps as learning experiences, having that growth mindset, it's crucial for innovation.
Right. And I think Sims touches on something really interesting
It does.
in the book, which is the power of storytelling.
The power of storytelling.
Not just in our creative endeavors, but in how we view and understand the journey of innovation itself.
Humans are wired for stories.
Yeah.
They help us make sense of the world, inspire us,
Right.
remind us that we're not alone in our struggles.
Yeah. And when it comes to, innovation.
When it comes to innovation,
Yeah.
stories can be incredibly powerful tools for overcoming fear.
Okay.
Think about the stories of, successful entrepreneurs, artists,
Yeah.
anyone who's pushed boundaries.
Right.
Those stories are full of
Challenges?
setbacks,
Yeah.
failures,
Moments of doubt?
but they also highlight the resilience, the
Yeah.
grit, the sheer determination that ultimately led to those breakthroughs.
Yeah. It's like hearing those stories.
It gives us permission
Gives us permission.
to fail, to experiment, to realize those failures
Mm-hmm.
are often just stepping stones to something even better.
Right. Right.
And sharing your stories,
yeah.
even the messy, imperfect ones, can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
It can inspire others to take their own little bets and know that they don't have to have all the answers up front
Right.
to start making a difference.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into little bets,
Into Little Bets.
what's the one thing you want to leave
the most important thing.
our listener with today?
I think it's this. Innovation is not some magical talent reserved for a select few.
Okay.
It's a process, a way of thinking that anyone can cultivate.
Right.
By embracing this philosophy of little bets,
Yeah.
by shifting your mindset to one of experimentation and continuous learning.
You can unlock your own creative potential
You can.
and start shaping the future.
That's right.
One small bet at a time.
One small bet at a time.
And who knows, maybe those small ripples will eventually turn into tidal waves.
Tidal waves
Of positive change.
of positive change.
Yeah.
So what small, low-risk experiment can you initiate today to explore an idea or tackle a problem you've been grappling with?
Right. It doesn't have to be anything huge.
It doesn't have to be huge.
Even a tiny step forward
Even a tiny step forward
is a step in the right direction.
is a step in the right direction.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
You're not alone.
There's a whole community of innovators, dreamers,
Dreamers.
little bet enthusiasts out there,
Little bit enthusiasts.
eager to share their stories, support each other,
Yeah. Push the boundaries of what's possible.
push the boundaries of what's possible. That's right.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Little Bets.
Thanks for joining us.
We hope you found it insightful, and we encourage you to continue exploring this world
This world of little bets.
of little bets, and we'd love to hear about your own experiments,
Your aha.
moments, the incredible things you create along the way.
Absolutely.
All right, until next time.
See you later.